Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
There's that old saying that says, when you're happy, you can hear the music. But when you're sad, you can feel the lyrics, and I've
never
always
heard that. I love
remembered
that.
that. I always remember that. And I can't remember where I saw it. It was probably about 10, 15 years ago. And it always stuck with me because there's nothing truer. If you're happy, you're driving down the road, you just listen to the song singing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not in a good spot and, a song comes on and you'll hear it, you'll hear the lyrics, and it might reach up and grab you.
Behind every struggle, there's a story, and every story deserves to be heard. This is the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Your hosts are Steve Hodgson and licensed psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis.
There are things people live with that they never say out loud. Pain that hides behind a smile, questions with no answers, battles that happen entirely within. Today I die alone. My smile is my disguise, calling all monsters. I'm just hollow. But sometimes those thoughts don't stay silent. They become music. Music that speaks to isolation, to guilt, to the feeling of losing control, to the parts of ourselves we hide from the world. This week, we sit down with Terry Blair, the bassist for the rock group Bellum. They are a U.S. Armed Forces veteran member band using music to tell the stories many people struggle to share. This isn't just about songs, it's about what those songs mean. Isolation, judgment, control, the battle within. What we hide, and what's left when everything else is gone. Because sometimes a song says what people can't. Here are your hosts.
Well, howdy, and welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson. I'm here alongside my co-host, the only man who can break down heavy metal lyrics and mental health in the same sentence. Licensed psychotherapist, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis, I know our guest today, besides his great message, I know you and I both enjoy that kind of music.
Absolutely.
That we're hearing here. And he came to us from Utah Burgess, which we'll talk about later in the interview. But when Utah sent me the link to his stuff the first time, and, I looked up to see a little more about him and played the first song, I think in the first 6 seconds, I said, okay, he's on.
Yeah.
He's going to be a guest. I know Dr. Davis will have no problem with him as well.
No problem at all.
And, I'll talk a little bit more about him in a second.
Go ahead.
So now, before we get into today's episode, I'd like for all of you to give a good listen to what we're about to say.
Tonight, we're going to be honoring veterans who have served their country faithfully, but sadly, many still struggle from mental health issues years after their deployments have ended.
And we want every veteran to know and completely understand the trauma you've seen and the trauma you experienced. We'd like to offer help to you. Please let us present you with Waypost Counseling.
No matter where you are in the U.S., if you have a computer and a video camera, Waypost can be of help. Licensed professionals who can help you with anxiety, PTSD, addictive disorders, whatever mental health issue you're struggling with, Waypost Counseling is here to help.
So please give a minute and listen really carefully.
Do you sometimes go through life and begin to think maybe something in your life feels off? Not broken, not falling apart, just heavier than it used to be. Stress, anxiety, thoughts that don't quiet down. Or maybe it's your relationship, conversations turning into arguments, distance growing where connection used to be, and you're not sure how to get back. Or maybe it's something more private, like gambling, something that started small, but now it's affecting your finances, your relationships, your peace of mind. And you keep telling yourself, I'll figure it out, but it hasn't gotten easier. The truth is, you don't have to do this alone. At Waypost Counseling, help is available for individuals, for couples, and for those struggling with addiction. And you don't even have to leave your home. If you're watching this right now, here's your reason to ask for help. We offer secure online sessions. You can talk to someone from a place that feels safe and private. No pressure, no judgment, just a conversation that could change everything. If something in you is saying, "Are they talking about me?" Maybe it's time. It's time to listen to that voice inside that is begging you to relieve the stress and anxiety and make the call. Waypost Counseling. Dial 317-762-0904 or dial 317-659-0179. Also, you can visit them on the web at waypostcounseling.com for more information, because we do not need to tell you your life does matters. And taking that first step could make all the difference. Remember that reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to begin to get the best of your life back again. Please, for you and your loved ones, make the call now.
Now, today's episode is one that hits on multiple levels because we're not just talking about music. We're talking about what people carry after life-changing events and experiences, what they don't always say out loud, and how sometimes the only way to express it, at least even for our guest tonight's point of view, is through a song.
And that's especially true when it comes to trauma, identity, and purpose. There are things people go through, especially those who've served, that don't always fit neatly into the conversation, but they do find their way into music, into lyrics, and into sound.
Okay, and today's guest knows that firsthand. We're joined by Terry Blair. He's the bass player for a veteran-led hard rock band called Bellum. Now, this band that didn't just come together to play music, they really came together to tell stories, and they're real stories, about things like PTSD, about loss, and what it means to keep going.
And what makes this even more powerful is that it isn't just a band with a message. It's a group of individuals who have lived experiences that shape that message in a very real way.
And here's what makes tonight's episode even more interesting. The band even stepped away for a while, but now they're coming back together because there's still songs that need to be heard. And as you'll hear tonight, I mean, they've already written 5 new ones that they're recording, but there's still stories that need to be told.
And that idea, the idea of returning to something meaningful, especially after time away, is something we'll definitely explore today.
And later in the episode, we're actually going to take a few of their songs, break down the lyrics like we've done before, and really understand what's being said beneath the surface. Because sometimes a song says what people can't. But for Terry, who joins us tonight, these songs were really personal. They were about his life. Yeah. So before we get into the interview with him, Dr. Davis, I have 2 questions that I think set up tonight's interview.
Okay.
Why is music such an important outlet for processing trauma?
So music is an important outlet because any type of art, or things that we create, whether that be music, writing, poetry, you name it, it's a way of expressing emotions with or without words. I mean, so we're taught, as a therapist, we're taught in school that if you have a client that's having a really hard time communicating how they feel, that's an intervention that you can try is, to have the person draw or paint or write or, write a song. And it gives us a place to put those feelings or to do something with those feelings. And that's imperative. For veterans specifically, many have been trained to compartmentalize emotions, to function in high stress or life-threatening environments. So emotional suppression can even be a survival skill in some instances. So giving veterans a way to, process those feelings is crucial, absolutely crucial.
It's funny because when we listened to Terry tonight, one of the things that it kept bothering me was because you'll hear me even ask the question during the interview, was that, they're trained not to really think about their emotions.
Yeah.
It's very task focused orientation. Get the job, the task that's done in hand, worry about your emotions and feelings later. Well, that's great to accomplish the mission,
Yeah.
but you're sort of, they're not robots.
Yeah.
That we can have robots and drones, that we can control to do that. And if the drone blows up, 50 people and 10 of them are children, by mistake, it's not the same way as, our guest Terry being out there
Yeah.
and seeing, 50 kids being blown up.
Yeah.
You focus on the task at hand, you come back, but that's got to destroy these veterans. And it's
Absolutely.
different for them than it does for citizens.
I think especially like in wartime, I remember talking to my grandpa Davis. He was in World War II, but I remember asking him when I think I was a teenager. So I kind of had, more of an understanding of what I was asking him, but I just remember asking like, well, what was it like on a, day to day, grandpa? And he was like, we didn't know if we were going to make it from day to day. So he was like, it was a really strange time. Um, and he just talked about kind of feeling everything and nothing all at once at the same time.
And I'm sure that, our great soldiers that are over in Iraq, Iran right now, that are sitting out in that strait, defending the strait and stuff,
Hmm.
you know, in 2 minutes, there could be, a
Yeah.
drone coming overhead and, that gets past the radar or something like that. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's, with, as I said, take my hats off and, with us, we bald heads, but we take
Yeah.
our hats off to servicemen and veterans and
Absolutely.
servicemen and women, I should say, and veterans. So, see, now today's episode that we're going to do is more than just music. It's purpose, brotherhood, and unfinished business.
Our guest is Terry Blair, bassist for the veteran-led hard rock band Bellum. Formed in 2019, Bellum quickly became one of the hardest working bands in their scene, playing festivals, charity events, and using their music to bring attention to real issues like post-traumatic stress disorder and veteran suicide.
Their breakout single, I Die Alone, didn't just make noise, it made an impact. And it reached listeners across 17 countries, and it really started some real conversations. But like a lot of things in life, the band eventually stepped away.
And now they're back, not just to play again, but because there are still songs that need to be heard and stories that need to be told.
So we're going to now present our interview with our special guest, Terry Blair. But right before we get into it, I want you to listen to a version that they did, a quick video of When Johnny Comes Marching Home.
Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. We'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout and the ladies, they will all turn up and we'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home.
Well, Terry, we're glad you're here with us this evening, and we look forward to this conversation. Now, first off, before we start, we want to thank you for your service, and thank you for being here with us tonight, too. See, we talked to a lot of people about mental health, but there's something different when that story is told through music. So we're going to start with you today on this. I think it's going to be a really, really good show.
Terry, if you would, please take us back a bit. And what first pulled you into music and specifically playing bass?
I've always been drawn to bass, even from in my teen years. Now, I had a bass I played a little bit, and of course, got married young, joined the military, sold everything. But fast forward a couple decades, my son was 15, and he said he wanted a guitar for his birthday. So, like a good father, I bought him a guitar, bought myself a bass, a guitar, and an amp, and kind of got back into it, and and just refound the love for it again. Once life slowed down a little bit and changed a little bit, I was able to get back into it. But I've always been drawn to the bass. Even
But
you look at some of the guys Rudy Sarzo, Francis Buchholz, Cliff Williams, Ian Hill. Those are all these guys I always gravitated to and I always tried to listen for. So it's kind of been a thing for me.
Okay.
it's one of those things. I don't think that music ever really leaves your blood. You just put
Yep.
it over to the side for a bit to rest a
Yeah.
little bit, but then it's there again.
Yep.
Like Terry and I were talking before the start of the show. It's like, yeah, okay, so I've retired from it for a while, but that still doesn't mean I don't pick that guitar up and start to
Yeah.
play, every once in a while. And bass, I pick that up and I start to play, and it's just in your blood. I don't think it's something that goes away. Now, you've been playing for over 15 years. What has it meant to you personally, okay, during those different seasons of your life, having that music?
Uh, if you ask myself and then you ask Eric, our guitar player, we give the same canned response we always do. Music saved our lives. Now music's always been there for me. I've always been a music fan. I've always listened to music, but playing music and everything like that kind of saved our lives. It gave us a direction and a focus.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a canned response to say, but it did. It's and so playing it and writing it and just being around it. Um, it's a nice diversion and it's a break from the realities that are outside of it. It's done a remarkable job for us, and I'm not quite sure how else to express it other than it just kind of saved our lives. And I'm sure there's other people that feel the same way. It's just,
How
Giving you
did
focus is
go ahead. I'm
important.
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, music does give you a specific focus. You know,
Yeah.
Dr. Davis as well, from playing music all those years. It's it's a release. I know, at least for me, it was a release from the stress of life that was
Yes.
all around you.
Yeah.
You toned in and you focused on the music, and you were able to focus in with people that you really liked, that all had that same goal and intention. And yeah, I could see how that very easily you could say, it saved your life.
Yeah.
Maybe not, that I would have committed suicide, but gave you a much better life.
yeah,
Yeah,
gave you a direction,
right. There you go. Yep.
a purpose, so to speak.
Hmm.
So Terry, how did Parabellum come together? And what do you believe made it click? You know what I mean?
I first had the idea for an all veteran band probably about 10, 15 years ago and just could never get it going. And I met Eric at we were attending we all belonged to the same veteran support group, and that's how I met Eric. And we started talking, and one day music came up, and hey, I'm a guitar player. Hey, I'm a bass player. Well, we should probably do something. Now my son plays guitar, so he was in there, so I've known him for a while, so he kind of come along. But it was all kind of rooted and started in the Veteran X, veteran support group, and that's kind of how it started. And, Kate was a veteran at the time. She come on, and you know, and I think what set us apart and what kind of really helped it was the fact that we were an all veteran band, and you don't see that. And our
Yeah.
songs were written like that. Even our covers that we did, we tried to base that on that. And we did covers of like When Johnny Comes Marching Home in This Land. And of course, we always did Fortunate Son because, well, you can't be a veteran band and not play Fortunate Son. I think that's in the Constitution or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. You
Fogarty's
know,
Constitution, if
you know.
anything. Yeah.
So, but it all started, at a veteran support group. That was kind of the foundation being laid for it.
Well,
And
most people believe it. I know I haven't seen the edits, but right before we started this segment, I played a bit of When Johnny Comes Marching Home. Okay, that was there too, because I just thought that was perfect lead-in to
yeah,
this thing, and that is by Parabellum. That's as well, so that's really important. Now let me ask you, okay, you were in the Air Force. How many years were you in the Air Force?
Just over 10.
10 years. Well, again, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
How do you feel that shaped you, not as a person, but also as a musician? Well, think
I
about
think
the discipline behind being a musician. I mean, and there's no question about the discipline you get being in the armed forces.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, it helped me with the discipline side of it, unless I'm just thinking of it a different way. But it gave me the ability to focus, to pinhole focus, draw the circle down really tight, and this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm focused on. This is what we're doing. And I think that's what really helped it. Um, so maybe that's discipline, but I always
Yeah.
attribute the focus towards it. That it helped me, stay, straight line and focused to the task at hand.
And
Believe it
basically
or
like
not, that's
seeing
what I was
something to
thinking.
the end, do you feel like?
Yeah.
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 So there's obviously a really unique bond among veterans. Um, do you feel like that translates into the way that the band writes and performs together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's and um, because there's a certain understanding, we all, some of us have deployed overseas, some of us haven't, but we've all been in the mix, in the circle. And so we all have a greater understanding of where we come from, terminology, how we act, how we present ourselves. It's all very like-minded,
Mhm.
so it helps. We're not bringing, we all come from different backgrounds, but we all come from the same background at the same time. So
Yeah.
there wasn't a real big learning curve on personalities, because veterans for the most part still conduct and present themselves in a certain way, and then they behave accordingly, sometimes. But so that
You didn't
always
say
helped.
according to whom, okay?
We never asked that question.
That's it. But I know you and I talked about this, when we were waiting to start the show here. Do you feel like music gives you a way to express things that are hard to talk about directly?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'll say this as a blanket statement first. Veterans, for the bulk of us, we're a bunch of idiots and knuckleheads when it comes to self-care. We absolutely are. You know, well, do anything you want for anybody else. But when it comes to self-care,
Mhm.
we will mire in a downward spiral just so long as nobody else knows. So when you start writing and you find an outlet for that, and it becomes a very personal, independent outlet. That's how
Yeah.
my writing was. I was able to get it out, and then I share it with a few people, and I shared it with Eric, and I shared it with Kate, and everything like that, and we started putting music to it. But it it's an outlet that you may not have, and it's a safe outlet, because there's other outlets, and there's plenty of veterans that struggle every day with addiction and alcohol and everything like that. This is the same kind of dopamine hit or whatever
Yeah.
release or emotional release or whatever it is, but it's a safer one,
Yeah.
and it's just the path we chose to go down.
Let me ask you before he asks the question, um, and this is a generalized question. Do you think that veterans deal with so many of these issues because you weren't, as much as everything you did, you're extremely proud of, but you weren't really trained to look out for yourself? It was
Um,
always the objective goal. I mean, they really did they ever teach you like about self-care? And
the self-care was putting on a band-aid, taking some
right,
aspirin, so they taught you medical self-care and everything like that. And the big problem in with the veterans and people in the military, and how they were treated and how it was responded is you were always taught to go to war. Okay. You were always trained to go to war. No one ever trained you to come home,
right,
and that's
Yeah.
that's the big stigma there is there's so many problems once you get home, I've got a trail of failed marriages and relationships behind me simply because I didn't know how to come home, and so I carried that burden with me without a way to express it, you know. And then there's a lot of it like that.
Do
So
you
yeah,
think our
that's
government's failing people, the veterans, in that regard?
I
And I'm
don't
not
think
trying to
there's
get too political,
Mhm.
just
I
in
don't think
general.
I don't think they're failing us. I think they're misallocating a lot of resources,
Mhm.
but it's very location specific. Um,
Mhm.
like our VA up here in Butler and everything like that's been fantastic for me. You get to some of those bigger VAs, Chicago, Philadelphia, Arizona, Phoenix, where the numbers are so vast that they're dealing with, the resources are stretched thin. They can do better. They can always do better. So I don't think they're failing. I don't think it's managed as properly or as allocated as responsibly as it should be.
Okay. So one of the things that's really awesome about the band is it doesn't just make music. You absolutely tackle heavy topics like PTSD, suicide. Was that always the vision for the band?
No, no. Originally, when we first come up with it, I wanted to be an all-veteran band. We were going to play popular, pro-America, pro-military covers and everything
Yeah.
like that. Um, and then I hit a spot in my life where I started writing, and when I write, it comes from, that position and that perspective of being a veteran. It's because that's the life I live,
Yeah.
and the troubles and the stuff that comes with it. So when I write, that's how it came out. And then, of course, being everybody else in the band being veterans, some of those lyrics resonated with them.
Yeah.
So once they started resonating, hey, this is a good idea,
Hmm.
and it's so once it started to resonate, we started putting music to it. Hey, this really works. So
Yeah.
and then we started recording, and it, things just kind of took off. But there's a lot of personal experience in it, and it was never the intention to be that, but that's what it grew into, and I'm really proud of the last 7 years, 8 years that we've put into it. I think it's worked out phenomenally.
Now I know you probably get a lot of feedback, from people who hear your songs, when you play different benefits and stuff. Uh, but have you ever felt that that becomes a responsibility when you're writing songs about mental health, knowing people may be listening in a way that is really vulnerable for some of those people?
I never thought of it that way, because I happen to think there's more people that feel like I do that don't express it in a healthy way than there are that express it. If you're having problems and feeling away and you're expressing it in a healthy way, you're expressing and everything like that. So
Mhm.
so I think that the song when my songs reach somebody, I think the ones that they reach the most, and I've had people email me saying, "Hey, I Die Alone is fantastic. I needed that right then and there." There's a guy out of Galveston emailed me out of the blue. I had no idea who he was, sent me a 2-page letter one day thanking me for that song. Blew my mind. I wasn't prepared to answer that question or prepared to deal with that because I didn't write it for that to reach anybody else. I wrote it for my outlet. But then as it started to gain traction, we started to get some feedback back. I'm like, this is something here,
Hmm.
people need to hear this. And the big part is knowing that, you're not alone in it. There's thousands of people that feel what you're feeling, but I was able to put on paper.
How do you balance, making such powerful and heavy music without it becoming overwhelming or triggering?
You don't. It becomes overwhelming and it becomes triggering. I wouldn't lie to you and say I don't. I got balloons and roses in the garden, and it's all happy. You don't. It triggers. But I happen to think that you need things to trigger you. You know, I need to be triggered. I need to be reminded. Now, I don't always handle it well, you know, um, but I don't want to forget why I'm the way I am.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to be triggered, and this whole thing where, well, you triggered me, you need to be triggered. You need to be reminded, because of the real problems is when you either try to forget too much, and this happened with me as well too, where I try to forget, and you find yourself in a worse spot than if you remember. There's some things I don't ever want to remember, but I remember them and I get triggered by them. And there's times I'll hear my own songs that I wrote and I'm like, oh, this sucks. And you just kind of go on from there.
Yeah.
But isn't it really why we listen to music?
There's an old
to bring us out of that. I'm just thinking myself last night, thanks to good old Spectrum, the second night in a row we had no internet. Okay, it just 6 months it was perfect, and the last 2 nights in a row it just went downhill on us. But I ended up putting on my MP3 player and listening to some music, and just listening to what you said there. Yeah, I sort of get lost in the music that I have on there, but I hear those lyrics and I can relate to a lot of those lyrics. And, and that sort of takes me off into that direction. I mean, what you're doing is probably right. You're writing stuff about your own life and that you've experienced, but you're also touching so many people by that.
There's that old saying that says, when you're happy, you can hear the music. But when you're sad, you can feel the lyrics, and
I've
I've
never
always
heard. I love
remembered
that.
I always remember that. And I can't remember where I saw it. It was probably about 10, 15 years ago. And it always stuck with me because there's nothing truer. If you're happy, you're driving down the road, you just listen to the song singing. But if you're not in a good spot, then, a song comes on and you'll hear it. You'll hear the lyrics and it might reach up and grab you.
Yeah, say, well, either that or even just, even if it's not that, it's just, you know what? I can relate to that. Yeah, but like we used to say in New York, I hear you. That's right on the mark. Okay, and there we go. And once you go into darkness on it. So, with the next part, and even knowing more about the journey you've been on, we're going to help our listeners a little bit. Because these songs aren't just about something you wrote back then. They're part of something that brought you back together now. So if anyone has watched any of our previous episodes with the talented musicians we've had on, you know what we're going to do next. And that's where we're going to take about 4 or 5 of these songs. We're going to play a minute clip or so of them and really break them down to help people understand what they mean beneath the surface.
As we go through some of these songs and lyrics, just a quick note to our audience. If anything in this conversation hits close to home, please remember that you're not alone. Help is always available. You can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Professionals are standing by to talk with you and get you assistance if needed. You may just need someone to talk to, and they are there for you 24/7.
We felt that's a little important to talk about when we're starting off here, because these songs are really deep songs. And I say deep songs, but they're also great songs too. And I'm not just saying that because you're sitting there, on the screen. But, if I remember when Utah presented you to us, and I was like, oh, we're going to do another musician now. I try to spread them out a little bit. But then when he said it was an old veterans band and the songs were about their time, and their experiences, I said, well, that puts it right up towards the top, of what we want to listen to. Because like you said earlier, it's unique that, it's an old veterans band that's doing it. So the first song I want to cover here is I Die Alone. So if we would, let's listen to a clip of that.
Troubled times.
Now, this is a song that really says something.
Yeah. Terry, I want to start at the very beginning of this song. Troubled
Okay.
times inside my mind, confusion clouds the air, my shattered dreams and hopeless cries. Is anybody there? So, right from the start, this feels like being trapped in your own mind. When you wrote or played this, what sort of headspace do you feel like you were trying to capture in that moment?
Um, that's where I was. I was in a very bad place. I was in a very dark place. I was very alone. I had all kinds of friends around me and everything like that, but I was alone. And when I wrote it, and it's written about veteran PTSD and suicide from the veteran perspective.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, and I was in a very bad spot, and what got me out of it was writing it, being able to put it down on paper, because you
Yeah.
feel like your head and your heart and everything's just going to explode because everything's so overwhelming, and you write it out. But yeah, I was not in a very good place at all. And it was, I was in trouble.
And so it was definitely like a personal
Oh,
experience.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, Dr. Davis, let me just ask you and stop there a second. I mean, when I'm listening to what he's saying, it almost sounds more like when we tell someone to journal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
write about their experience in journaling, except as musicians, we have that uncanny ability to journal through our music, to write songs about them. I mean, is that's a pretty normal reaction for someone that's dealing with PTSD or stress at that time, is it not?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it started out as when I first started to write this, it started out as I was just going to write some words down to help me out. I had no intentions to write a song.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 3 hours later, I wrote a song. So it was originally, just like you're saying, a journal, and just help get my words out there,
Yeah.
because I didn't feel I had anybody to express them to, or a way to express them. So I was going to re-express them back to myself just by putting them on paper, and that's how it was born.
Yeah, you said in the song, I clutch my chest and bare my soul, no longer mine to share. Rip out my heart and show the world, blackened by despair. Okay, wow. Those are some hefty lyrics, and it shows how incredibly vulnerable you were feeling probably at the time, and like anyone is trying to be seen, but being completely exposed also at the same time. So, do you think people, especially veterans, struggle with wanting to open up, but fearing what happens if they do?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's an implied not there's an implied strength that comes with serving. So any kind of implied weakness, and this is on a personal level, not on a
Right.
global but from a
Yeah.
personal level, any kind of implied weakness is frowned upon individually. Nobody's ever going to come up and say, "Hey, well, you're weak." No, but mentally to yourself, that implied weakness, it's earth shattering.
Let me just ask you before you ask that, did when you were in battle, correct?
I was in the Middle East about 4 years.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever see any of your colleagues that you're in battle with just not be able to handle the situation that they were in? And I'm not
You
trying
see
to
it.
pull anything out for dramatics here. I'm just curious with the line of questioning.
Everybody handles everything different. But yeah, absolutely right. Some people handle things not well. Some people handle them well. But the good thing about 99% of the time while you're over there, you're so task driven, so task motivated, that you don't have time to decompress and act differently. And that's one good thing about military training is it's very regimented. You're going to point A, you're going to point B, you're going to point C. That's it. That's what we're doing. We can deal with the rest later. Um, but everybody handles the stress and everything a little bit different. So you see a little bit different reactions, but there's still task on hand.
Yeah. When you say today I die alone, tomorrow is not my own. I mean, that's a heavy line and it repeats throughout the song. When someone says something like that, what does that represent for you?
When I wrote that was me. That was a final goodbye for me. Like, tomorrow's not mine. I don't have a tomorrow. That's what it was. It's I was in a spot right now at that particular point in time that I don't have a tomorrow. Today I'm going to die alone by myself, and I don't have a tomorrow to go to. And that's where I was.
Yeah.
Well, you see, cold and dark on a moonless night, no answer to the why. One last breath for memory's sake, screaming at the sky. Okay, so there's a moment, it seems like, where you feel like someone is searching for answers, but not finding any. So, in your experience, what personally or through others, how common is that feeling of why with no answers? You said you're very, point driven, to A, B, and C. Okay, really sounds like you didn't have any time to say why.
There's the why usually comes after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I had said earlier that no one trains you to come home, but when you get home, that's when the questions happen. And especially if you see some stuff and some bad stuff happen, now you're like, well, why? There's never an answer to the why. There's always the canned answer because you signed up for it, you were told to do it, you go do it.
Right, you feel
That's
ready.
why.
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, but that's not the why everybody's looking for. It's why, how did I get here? How am I in this place? Why did this happen that way? You know,
Yeah.
and that's where that comes from.
Do you, so when you say all alone, this bed of stone, it's my lifeless place. Um, you know, can you talk a little bit more about that?
I was sitting on a bridge down by the river on a piece of concrete. You know, that was it. This is my lifeless place. I was never at the point that I was actually going to do it, but I
Mhm.
went and sat there. you know.
Yeah.
And then I sat there and I'm like, well, this is it. Well, if it's going to happen, it's going to be at this place. This is my lifeless place. When I can't
Yeah.
handle it anymore, I had my spot picked out. I already
Yeah.
did.
Well, you
And
say,
then,
you say too, I don't want to die alone
Yeah.
yeah,
in there. Okay, I mean, you know, that line really changes everything. To that point of the song, it's about acceptance, but here it sounds like a cry for connection.
Mhm.
Was there
and that's,
intentionalness in that?
oh, absolutely. And that's why it's only said one time and it's the very last line in the song.
Hmm.
Because through all this feeling and all this despair, it's a very despairing song. It's a very dark and song. But through the end of it all, you know, nobody wants to die alone. I
Yeah.
don't want to die alone. I want to be with my friends. I want to be with my family. I want to be in a good place. I don't want to be on a bridge in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. Dying alone. And that's where that sign was 100% intentional to close out the song. I
Yeah.
don't want to die alone, and then I think that's helped the song resonate because you
Yeah.
have to get to the end of the song for it to resolve itself. And I think that was just that I think makes the song, that
Yeah.
last line.
Dr. Davis, from a psychological standpoint, what does a line like that tell you?
Basically, like we were talking about earlier, it's someone with either, they have emotional needs that haven't been met, or it's just a longing for connection,
Yeah,
typically.
because really, that's it's underneath most of people's, and we've had and done shows on suicide and stuff. I
Yeah.
think most people really don't want to die.
No,
Okay, but they
absolutely.
just lost that connection
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
everything else. So now we really hit heavy on that song, and I apologize, but it's really it's a good song.
This song has done very well for us. It was our first single we released, and it's done real well globally for us. So it's
Mhm. Well,
pretty
because
excited
it's
that it.
it's so strong of a tune. I mean,
Yeah.
first off, the music is awesome to it, but number two, the lyrics stand right behind it too. It's not one of those songs you say, the lyrics suck, but the music was really cool. I mean, this has everything going for it,
Mhm.
from both sides. I want to talk about the second song. You know, move past that, and it's Dies Irae. Is that how it's pronounced?
It's Dies Irae.
Dies
It's
Irae. Okay,
Latin.
right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, yeah, it's right. And I'm trying to pronounce it in American, so English instead of in Latin.
Uh,
Okay.
I get in trouble for mispronouncing it all the time.
Well, I figured you'd
It
be
is
better at it than me.
that song was specifically written for Kate. Um, Kate was classically trained in music and everything like that, and great opera voice. So I wrote that for her so she can sing the opening, in opera and stuff like that. But it is literally taking from the Catholic Mass for the Dead. It's one of the requiems,
Right. Yeah.
so there's a lot of the requiem's words in it. So I can't take responsibility for a whole lot of the lyrics in it. But putting it together, I think it's by far one of our most complete and complex songs. Absolutely.
Well, when you say Kate, just for our listeners, she was actually the vocalist of the band, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want people to be confused because we just said Kate, like they should know who Kate was. So, yeah.
Well, they
Okay.
should.
Yeah, that's right. How dare them not know that? So much. Go ahead, Dr. Davis. I'm gonna let you hit the next one.
And you can feel that shift immediately. This isn't just internal pain anymore. This is someone wrestling with guilt, accountability, and something greater than themselves.
You know, it's one of those things that the song, um, it's spiritual, but it's in a different way. That's spiritual. It's not just, when I listen to that, obviously the music for me is distracting because as a musician, I instantaneously go to the music first.
Yeah.
But when I listen to it, now we're both brought up Catholic and stuff,
Mhm.
I mean, I understood. I used to be a church organist, so I understood where a lot of the lyrics were coming from. But I really didn't go towards the religious side more the heavier side of what people were feeling during that song. I mean, am I correct with that?
I think so. I think so because there's Catholic masses and stuff. They're very dark. You were raised Catholic and everything like that. They're very doomy and despair. So there's a lot of material from there. Um, and I kind of rewrote and rearranged that and everything like that to where it says, that um so I was able to get, with the Requiem, there's a sense of existential doom that comes with the Requiem for some reason as I read it out. And I'd first heard an old band do a song called Dies Irae back in the early 90s, a band called Believer, which was a Christian thrash band. And I was like, that's really cool. Now, their lyrics didn't come from the Requiem or anything like that. It was just based off of that. Um, but I liked the message on it. I thought it fit. And it's a song that's done fantastic for us. It's been a showcase song for us.
It's awesome.
And I don't think I answered your question.
No, you did. You did. I mean, really, that was it. He's going to read you. You'll be able to read those in Latin for him.
I'll try.
Okay.
So it looks like Libera me, Domini, de morte, eterna, deliver me, Lord, from eternal death. So right from the beginning, it's like a plea that's not just emotional but spiritual.
Yeah.
What inspired you to bring that kind of language into the theme? Is it meant to represent like fear of judgment or search for redemption?
I think I think what brought it to the forefront most is I thought it resonated with some of the other songs that we were writing and kind of where I was at, what we were feeling at the time.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? I, this is kind of how I feel, and this is kind of what it is, and this is perfect, you know. And this, so yeah, the lyrics kind of drew the music to it, but I was drawn to the lyrics because of where I was, or at
Yeah.
least the Latin phrasing of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you even say days of death, doom impending, heaven and earth, ashes ending. Um, it almost feels like the end, of everything. I mean, I know it's imagery, but forget about even what question I was going to ask. Were there times when you were in battle and stuff where you literally felt like this is it? Going down in the blaze of glory, not to steal from Jovi.
With me personally, no. No, you're just so focused on what you're doing. It's and I was never with like my nephew was in the first battle or the second battle of Fallujah and Ramadi and everything like that. I was never in those places, face to face like he was. So I never quite had those close, intense feelings of it. Um, but we're just very task oriented, and I don't think you had time. When we were over there, you didn't have time to deal with that. You dealt with that later. At least that from my experience on that.
It's funny because you keep saying something, and you're saying how you were mission focused and oriented. Your task, you were focused on the task, and your emotions were left behind during that time. Like you said, you left to deal with those emotions and those thoughts later on. Just my own curiosity, because every time you say it, it keeps spurring the same question in my head. Do you think that was intentional? So that you didn't,
I think
you weren't allowed to have human side, and it was more like a robotic side. You did this first,
oh,
and we'll deal
absolutely,
with it later. Yeah.
absolutely. If you're going to convince an 18-year-old that it's okay for him to go die for his country right now, you have to take the emotion out of it. And I'm
Mhm.
not trying to be blunt or dark about
Yeah.
it, but it's you know, emotions get you killed. you know so you stay very task oriented. You stay on top. It's a very definitive set of what you're going to do. There's no room for an emotional response. When you start getting emotional in that, that's when bad things happen.
You talked about, the end, it's like for your day of reckoning, you're trying
Yeah.
to take some excuse for that. I want to ask Dr. Davis a question. When someone's dealing with guilt, shame, or even just judgment, how important is it psychologically for them to find some form of forgiveness, whether that's from others, themselves, or even spiritually?
It's crucial because really, like unresolved shame, it keeps people stuck. The way I always talk about shame is what I feel when, like, guilt is what I feel when I violate the golden rule, when I'm knowingly doing wrong. But shame feels like guilt, but I haven't done anything wrong. And I think that's really important for people to understand that. I've had clients throughout the years that that was a big eye opener for them because a lot of the things they had been carrying from the past, they thought were guilt and they thought, were their fault. And it's like, no, it was shame. It's like, you don't have to carry that, it wasn't their fault. So it's crucial as far as releasing and moving forward, but letting go of shame or guilt is a process, typically not an event. So hopefully that answers.
It's interesting between those two songs. You got total isolation on one side and judgment on the other. And somewhere in the middle is like the person who's trying to survive both of those. So
Yeah.
And I think with Desiree, it just comes right down to it that sooner or later, one way or another, you're going to have to answer to yourself, to your friends, to a higher power, to wherever. You're going to have to come to a reckoning with either who you are and how you are, and whether it be the bad way you deal with it and reckon with it, or whether you find a different way to reckon with it. You're going to have to come to terms with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I took from this song is, just coming to terms with it. Whether you ask forgiveness from yourself or from somebody else, or like I said, if you believe in God, something to the spiritual that way,
Mhm.
That's what it is.
Okay, so next song we're going to work on listen to, I should say work on. You've already worked on it. It's called Bread and Circuses. So let's just give that a quick listen.
Where
Now you see this song, completely different tone from the other two, and that's what makes this episode so compelling. You've gone from isolation, when I die alone, judgment, redemption, now to control, manipulation, and awareness. So the first song we talked about was very internal. Second one, I really, for me, feels spiritual, but this one feels external, almost like a warning, and a shift that focuses from what's happening inside a person to what may be influencing them on the outside.
Yeah. The song right away, it feels like it's calling something out, so let's start at the top where you say, "Where are you people looking through your eyes? Nothing to see here, vacant for life." So it kind of feels like someone looking out at the world and seeing people, but not really seeing them. Is that accurate?
Uh, Not entirely. When Kate wrote this song, and she wrote it, and it goes back to I'm trying to remember if so I can say this right. Back to the Roman days, if you give them bread and circuses, they'll be happy. So it's written about basically the state of the world today. If you give them enough diversion and distraction, you can do whatever you want over here on the right side behind the curtain, as long as over
Misdirection.
on the this
Yeah.
side over here, they're fat and happy and they're watching TV and so that I believe was her motivation for writing that is just an indictment of the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
It's
I
funny.
think that's awesome.
I
That's
did
cool.
magic for so many years, the great Haji. Okay. And one of the things I always talked about was you could say, okay, everybody, I want you to want you to watch this hand right here now. And the whole audience will look up at this hand. And you can do whatever you want with the other hand because misdirection. They were
Yeah.
watching that one
Uh,
arm and that one hand, and you could literally light a match and light a cigarette. Nobody would see it because they're all looking up in the air at that hand, and that misdirection we talked about then. I think that's still going on today.
Yeah, and towards you get towards the song, it's almost an urging to wake up, to bypass the diversion, the bread and circuses, to turn off the TV and the entertainment, to
Yeah.
forget the comfort things and open your eyes to what's going on around you. Because all you have to do is look and see nobody's shy about what's going on. Nobody's hiding anything. They're just misdirecting your attention, and that's
Yeah.
the direction. It doesn't matter what side politically you lean on or socially or globally or whatever. It's all relevant, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So that's where that come from. That's really the only song we have that has a political meaning to it. But that's what it is. It's simply that you're being diverted. You're being, and step away from that, because it's not
Yeah.
healthy for you.
You say with these distractions, they mold you like clay. As they begin, they take your rights away. God, and like you say, if that is today, and that could have been 20 years ago as well, too. That's today, and you think now, just from an outside, that people are capable of stepping away and not listening to what CNN, Fox, and everything is spreading at them. Everybody's got their agenda, and do you think we're even capable of seeing what's really going on?
I will tell you when COVID first hit, and and all the riots and the protests and everything were going on. Me and a few friends of mine, we went to a few of those places, and what we learned is what you see on TV isn't what you see there. Okay. So we urged everybody, and I still say to this day, turn off TV, turn off Facebook, turn off everything. Go outside and talk to your neighbor. You will realize you have far more in common with your neighbor,
Mhm.
regardless of, skin color, religion, height, weight, whatever. You have far more in common with the guy living on the street to you than what they're allowing you to believe you are, you know. Um, and that was one of the most eye-opening things that year we spent going all over the place. It really opened my eyes to, there's something behind this curtain, and they're not
Mhm.
allowing us to see it. So, let's just open the curtain.
Right.
You
Do
know,
you think the people are uncomfortable with the answers to what they're going to have to do? to make that change?
I think people are comfortable with not knowing the answers.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
We alluded to that before. People are real comfortable, and change doesn't happen while you're comfortable. You like your house, you like electricity, you like a car, you like a fridge full of food. You're comfortable. What are you willing to give up to be uncomfortable? To see the change. And the answer for a large portion of the population is nothing, because we're still comfortable. Well, welcome to the show.
Right, yeah,
I
exactly.
like that.
Well, it's exactly how the script was written in the show. Yeah. So, Dr. Davis, let me ask you: when people are constantly distracted, overwhelmed, or going through the motions, what does that do to their mental health over a long period of time?
Basically, it gets us focused on kind of like being on autopilot and maybe not paying as much attention as we typically would, And a lot of those things are just done through repetition, diversionary tactics and stuff like that. So just feeling constantly distracted can leave us feeling exhausted, worn out. Having awareness is critical because we can't change what we don't recognize. So being able to recognize that it is a show, but like Terry's saying. So
Sometimes that battle isn't just inside us; it's about what we're being fed and what we're being shown, and whether
Yeah.
we ever stop long enough to question it. That's AI is actually probably another thing as far as that's concerned. Have we taken the time to question what it's
Yeah.
feeding us, or are we just again, being fed that script? Okay, this is all knowledgeable. It's taking everything, but who knows if what it's telling us is not just part of the show?
Yeah,
In the same
exactly.
way. So I want to move on to the next song. Okay, it's "Calling All Monsters." Okay, so if we take a second, let's give that a listen to.
In my thoughts and in my soul, the rage it burns I can't control. Visions fuel a violent mind. Black thoughts roll, no hope to find. Calling all monsters from under the bed. Unleash the pain and embrace the dread.
So the last song we talked about was what was happening around us. The one, this one goes right back inside, but in a much different way. It feels like a battle happening in real time, and not just a battle with circumstances, but a battle with thoughts, emotions, and identity.
Yeah, it starts with in my thoughts and in my soul, the rage it burns I can't control. So that's something that a lot of people probably feel but don't always admit. That loss of control over our own thoughts and emotions. Is that part of what you were trying to capture there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, everybody's got something burning inside of them. Everybody's got monsters inside of them somehow. And they'll eat at you, whether they're small ones or they're big ones. And I wanted to portray what it feels like to have that happening. What it feels like
Yeah.
to be in that space. With your inner conflict.
Before I ask my next question, do you feel like the time in service awoke that monster inside of you?
I don't think it awoke it, but I think it fed it.
Okay.
I think there were portions of my youth and my childhood that probably started the process, but it definitely fed it. And then, more so when you got out, and like I said, they never teach you how to come home. When you got out, now you're constantly feeding it in circumstances that you don't understand. places that you don't understand. It's being fed. I think it's being fed for a long time.
Yeah, they never taught you how to tame that monster once you get
No,
back. Yeah.
no,
So you say visions fuel a violent mind. Black thoughts roll, no hope to find. Um, they feel like intrusive thoughts, almost relentless. Do you think people get stuck in their own mind to the point where it feels like there's just no way out?
absolutely, absolutely. And I will say 100%. If you've never thought, violently thought towards yourself, this is it, this is the end. If you've never thought that, I'm going to call you a liar, because everybody's thought it. It's how you deal with it and how you express it. Um,
Yeah.
but the visions that you see, and what you're reacting to in your mind, that's what's fueling that process. It's what that's what's feeding the fire.
When I like where you say calling all monsters from under the bed, unleash the pain, embrace the dread. I think that's really interesting because instead of running from the monsters, you're calling them out. Um, so do you feel like that's meant to show someone confronting their fear, and identifying with the darkness?
When I wrote that, and I think what my thought process that was is, um, there was an old kids book that I read years ago where this young kid made friends with the monster under his bed, and I took that and I'm like, your monsters aren't going away. They're not. They're going to be there. They just don't disappear. They go dormant or whatnot. So
Mhm.
embrace them. Embrace them. They're yours. You've earned them. I've earned every monster, every bad thought that I got, every emotion that I feel. I've earned it. Well, I'm going to embrace it because it's part of who I am. Now, I'm going to try to find a way to, live normally with it, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to run and hide from it. And that I think is the concept that I was going for.
Well, that sort of leads into my next question. I want to give the lyric first, but waging war for inner peace, bloodshot eyes refuse to sleep. Um, that raging war for inner peace, that really stands out. Do you feel like, and this is going to be a little more of an open question, but do you feel it's like that for a lot of people who dealing with trauma and PTSD?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. I think, I think the battle you fight with yourself is far greater than any battle you'll ever fight. And there's no saying what'll trigger it and what happened in your life. I lived a different life than Dr. Eric. I lived a different life than you. We all have our triggers on what gets a kind of an emotional response, and we all fight our inner war. Um, so I think it's always going to be there. There's always going to be a fight there. There's always going to be an internal struggle and a conflict. I think that's just part of being human and being aware. You know.
So you then say, call all monsters out of the dark, show me the way, protect my heart. And that's a powerful shift, because now the monsters aren't just something to fear, they're something being asked to protect. So was that meant to represent like coping mechanisms?
That's embracing who, to me, that's embracing who I am and how I got here and what's with me.
Yeah.
I have monsters. We all have monsters, and like I said, not run from. So I'm going to embrace my monsters. Okay. I'm going to let them show me the way, why I'm like I am and how I cannot be like I am. At the same time, I'm going to allow them to protect me from acting upon them,
Yeah.
by acknowledging their existence.
Yeah.
So like saving my demons, save me from this hell. Is that actually just like, call for help?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's both an external and an internal call for help. I'm a firm believer that you can't ever get external help until you get internal help first. You have to make that first step. 'Cause I can come to Dr. Davis with a whole list of problems, but until I solve my problem one by going to Dr. Davis, there ain't nothing he can do for me.
Right.
It just
Yeah.
it's you have to take that first step, and I think I'm reaching for that is when I
Yeah.
wrote that.
Yeah, we say that the the Waypost commercial. You have to make that first step.
Mhm.
Nobody can make that phone call for
Yeah.
you. You have to want to make that first call. So
It's the same thing with coming out of addiction and everything like that. And a lot of veteran brothers and sisters in addiction, nobody can make the call for you. You still have to call for help on your own,
right.
because it never works. If I make you go, it never works. You make you go. You have to do that. And
Yeah.
that's what I was reaching for.
So I always said that too with cigarette smoking. Okay, people can tell you got to stop, you got to stop. Okay, but if you stop because they're telling you to stop, you're never going to stop. You got to stop because you want to stop.
Yep.
The day you wake up and say, I don't want to smoke anymore, or even for an addict, I don't want to do drugs anymore.
Mhm.
Okay, that's when your first step towards taking the help.
Yeah,
Like
that's
you say,
what makes
admitting
or
there's a
breaks us
problem.
is what we do to make that happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
So
And
sometimes the monsters aren't just what we fear, they're what we create to survive what we're feeling. So I want to move to the next song, which is called My Disguise. Okay, here's a quick clip of that. Song we talked about felt like a battle happening out in the open. This one, for me, again, feels different. It feels like what people carry and hide, and sometimes those are struggles that go unnoticed the longest. Because on the outside, everything seems okay. The song My Disguise, and right from the beginning, makes it feel really more personal on the inside.
Yeah. Can you hear unspoken words, see the truth behind the lies? This almost feels like somebody hoping to be noticed without actually saying anything. Do you think people sometimes want others to see the pain without having to admit it out loud?
no, I just think that I think they're wanting to be noticed to the point that when I wrote it's how I present myself to you is not who I am.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for a lot of people. And so that's asking, can you hear the words that I'm not saying? Can you see my truth? Because I'm not giving you my truth, but can you see it?
Yeah.
Can you see the dryness of my tears? I'm crying on the inside, but my eyes are dry. Can you see that? My
Mhm.
smile, I'm smiling. You see me smiling. We're laughing, having a good time. That's my disguise,
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
even say
and that's
that
how I
you
wrote it.
actually got a line that says my smile is my disguise in the song too. So you even say I hide inside myself, a side I cannot share. My world is make believe. Does anybody really care? Sorry, the word really isn't in there, but yeah, does anybody care? You're searching for peace, a place that's deep inside. It's a weight I bear alone. Do you think people often convince themselves that they have to deal with things on their own and that they can't reach out for help?
I can't speak generally, but I know for me, I did absolutely, and I don't think I'm alone in that. Um, you know, I try to shoulder, and this is when I went back to the beginning. Veterans are knuckleheads and idiots when it comes to self care. So I think there's a lot of us like that will shoulder our burden alone. I mean,
Mhm.
I'll help you carry your burden all day long, but you leave mine alone. That's mine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
so I think that's where that comes from. It's it's a weight that I bear alone. Do I want to bear it alone? No. But am I going to allow you to bear my weight? No. So I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No,
Oh,
that
it
makes
does.
total sense to me. Absolutely.
You know, Dr. Davis, when someone's coming, or I should say, constantly hiding what they're feeling, where they're smiling on the outside, but really struggling on the inside, what does that do to a person over time?
It wears them out, because we're basically having to, play this character, which we all do. We all have a professional character we play, and but it's when things don't match on the inside. I mean, that gets very exhausting, and that's a lot of times trying to keep up that facade and becoming exhausted with that. That can lead to potential, substance use, all sorts of things. So it's
So
the
how do they begin to
transparent.
let that guard down that they have? How do they begin to start doing that?
A little bit at a time.
Mhm.
I mean, really, just starting small is okay. You know,
There was an old phrase that was taught to me years ago and everything like that, and I kind of carry it with me, and it kind of and it's courage means being the only one that knows you're afraid. That's courage. And I think there's a lot of us, especially the veterans that feel like that, you know, scared to death. You'll never know. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I've always taken that with me, and that's the true sign of courage is that you'll never know that I'm afraid.
Right. And it's a sad thing, I think, in mental health in general. I think, a lot of people just try to cover it up with
Yeah.
that smile, like you said, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm doing fine. And deep
Yeah.
inside, they're dealing with a lot. Now, I don't want to run out of time. So the last song I want to cover is called Hollow. And we talked about this a little before we came on the air too. Now, for the people who know, Hollow was recorded with the band Among Thorns and was released in 2020. So let's give a listen to that.
I can't read what my eyes have seen. It's a world I can't explain. A traveler lost in a soul of rage. Hope won't heal this pain. I sing through you with distant stare, wondering where I am. Drowning in despair and fear, praying for a hand. I'm not the hero that you see, not the savior on your knees. In the dead of night when the shadows leave, I'm just hollow.
So, we've talked about what people hide, what what it feels like what's left, and everything else is stripped away. And sometimes what's left is in chaos. It's emptiness, disconnection, a loss of identity. Now, the song Hollow, this one feels very honest, almost like something taking off the expectations that's placed on them.
Yeah. My mind can't read what my eyes have seen. It's a world I can't explain. So that feels to me kind of like trying to process something that doesn't make sense. Like your mind, like we experience something and our mind's trying to catch up. Um, did you write this from a place of trying to understand something really overwhelming or traumatic?
When I wrote this, and this will go back to I Die Alone, I wrote Hollow and I Die Alone over the same weekend. So I was in the same spot and everything like that.
You were feeling
And
really great that weekend, weren't you?
I need bad stuff to happen to me so I can write good lyrics.
Yeah, he wrote.
We talked
I was
about
going to
that.
say he wrote some great tunes that weekend.
No, we talked
But
about that before we came on the air about, when he had writer's block. And he said,
Yeah.
so I need some bad things to happen just so I can write some more songs.
yeah, but that just comes from the inner struggle of trying to understand what I've seen in my life and where I've been, and some things I can't process. I don't understand, you know, how this happened or how that happened or why this
Yeah.
is like that, and I can't explain it. So that's where that comes from.
A traveler lost in the soul of rage. Hope won't heal this pain. That line talks about, I mean, basically, you can almost feel how heavy you were feeling during that
Mhm.
time. Do you think people sometimes reach a point where they don't believe things will ever get better?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I will say, and everybody's on a roller coaster. You're good, you're bad, you're good, you're bad, you're good, you're bad over and over again. Um, the it'll always get better, but it ain't always going to feel like it, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to kind of ride it and see where it's going to take you, and that's what it is. It's that's what I think.
Yeah. It's a process. A lot of times we think things will be an event, and really they're an ongoing process. I mean, um, something you said in this song that I think is awesome, and I can really like this really spoke to me when you said, I see through you with a distant stare, wondering where I am." I just that line, I was like, wow, that's some deep stuff. So, what does that mean to you? Is it like disconnection or?
When I go through my bouts with PTSD and everything like that, and I get into some of my bad spaces, and I always tell everybody, I said, I will disappear right in front of you. We'll be having a conversation. I'll go to work. I'll do whatever, but I am literally not home, and it'll go for days at a time. So wherever I'm seeing you at, it's just from a distant spot. And and it's affected me drastically and affected most every relationship I've been in the last 30 years. Um, so as I'm looking through that distant stare and I've disappeared, it leaves a lot of people wondering where I am, and
Mhm.
I can't answer that. But yeah, that's from.
Dr. Davis, when someone describes themselves as hollow, what does that typically mean psychologically?
It just means that they're feeling empty or numb. I've heard a couple of different things, and I want to share this. So, in some contexts, I've heard numb is feeling nothing. Like if you have surgery, I hope I'm numb. I hope I'm not feeling anything. But also, like emotionally, numb can mean I'm feeling every single thing all at once. To where it's just completely overwhelming. And paradoxically, it kind of feels like we're feeling nothing, but it's just an overload of feeling everything. So a lot of people who feel hollow, it's not because they lack emotion. It's just, the mind and body sometimes shuts down emotions as a way to survive, and help us, persist through whatever we're dealing with.
And that emptiness can be rebuilt and reconnected over time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we talked about, I think it was 5 songs, and we touched lightly on the 5 songs. I mean, we could be here hours talking with Terry about these. And I just want you to say, I just picked those 5. They just randomly picked those 5 because of the lyrics. There's a catalog of songs there
Mm-hmm.
that are out there. And to our listeners, even the songs you heard today, the links to all the YouTube and to website and everything is in the written description. So if you want to go back and hear like an entire song, even I think there's ways to purchase the song too on your website, aren't there? Or is it with Spotify?
Through Spotify and whatnot. And we still have some physical CDs left. So if somebody gets a hold of me and wants a physical CD, then we'll work with it that way.
Hmm.
But I think CDs are dead and dying. They're coasters now. So, but
Everything is digital
but yeah,
music today. Yeah,
yeah, we're
Yeah.
we're on all the we're on all the streaming sites, so you can get your music through there.
right.
Okay.
So
And I'll get paid 0.0000001 cent per play.
yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Like, man, I listened to my own album 10 times yesterday. Oh, really? Yeah, I made a penny.
Yeah.
It seems like that a lot of times.
There are people I know, and I'm not going to name names, that have a separate laptop or two that just play their Spotify over and over again just to generate revenue.
Yeah,
Hey,
and
I'm not.
literally you
I
have to
wish
take
I
a
was lying.
24-hour period to make about 15, 20 cents,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
somebody's making a fortune off of that when it's being done.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I want to switch gears a little bit to end up here, and I'm going to let Dr. Davis ask the first one because you and I talked about this before we came on the air.
Okay, so if
You about him stepping away. The
yeah,
band.
you guys had stepped away and now you've come back together.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen unless something meaningful is pulling you back. So what brought Parabellum back together?
But when I had said earlier that music, especially for myself and Eric, saved our lives,
Yeah.
um, Eric gave me a call about a week later. He's like, this doesn't work for me. Not being in the band, not working, being on hiatus doesn't work for me. And I said, good, because it doesn't work for me either.
Mhm.
you know
Yeah.
and so he said, well, let's put it back together. We've got a body of work, we've got a vision, we've done a lot of great things in the last 8 years. He says, so we're just going to rebuild it. We'll catch our breath, and we'll come back, and we've got songs written. We're just going to keep moving forward. But yeah, it was literally, a phone call from Eric feeling the same exact way I felt. Hey, I need this. He said,
Yeah.
good, I need it too. So
So this comeback, do you feel it's going to be more about the music or the message or both?
well, with the songs that I've written so far, it's going to be both. The songs I've written, and obviously, this past year I've kind of, dipped down into a not so good space and wrote a few more, pretty good songs, I think. So I think it's going to, but we're going to concentrate on one, the music, but the message as well, because I think the message is near and dear to us as well. And I'd like to keep pursuing that.
Do you feel like the band is more than music, almost like it has a mission?
I I never thought of that way until that was presented to me about 2 years ago. You
Yeah.
know, um, and you start hearing people say, this song, really resonated with me. Anybody can play the song. So it's about the song itself, and I think there's a purpose behind it, and I'd like to think that that purpose drives the music. Now, the music gives a platform for it, but
Mhm.
I think so. I think they're both in this, in helping each other. But I think the message is where we're going to sit at.
Now,
Okay.
can you talk to our listeners about a little two-part question? Number one, I know with the regrouping with Eric and stuff, that you're possibly going to have some new members, even some old member coming back on drums and stuff. We talked about and where they could find more information about the band.
Well, the easiest way to find us is on Facebook at Parabellum PGH on Facebook, or parabellumpgh.com is our website. We're on all the streaming sites and everything like that. Right now, it'd be myself, Eric, and Lee will be coming back. We've got a new drummer that's on board already. We've got two singers that we've kind of narrowed it down to that, we're really enjoying working with. So we're going to kind of see where that goes and get ready to put some stuff out. Um, then we'll be back out recording and getting things ready.
And all the links that he just talked about are all in the description as well. So you don't have to worry, just go to the written description of this video and find it. Terry, after everything we've talked about across these songs, as someone's watching right now, okay, and they feel empty, maybe disconnected, or they don't like who people think they are, what would you want them to hear?
It depends on what emotion they're feeling, because some of the songs have very different emotions. I don't think if somebody's sad, I want them to hear "I Die Alone,"
Yeah.
But if somebody's feeling disconnected, maybe they want to hear "Hollow,"
Mhm.
or if somebody's not feeling that, you know, they're being not seen for who they are, maybe they want to hear "My Disguise." What I'd simply say is just take a listen, and even if it's not our music, music will find a way to touch your soul and heal your heart if you let it. You just got to
Absolutely.
find the right song. You know, so just listen to music. You know, And like I said, if not ours, anybody's. Music has you do that. You do that driving down the road. Sometimes the right song at the right time will just come on for no reason other than that it's the right
Mhm.
time for it.
Right.
So I just keep listening to music.
Terry, listen, I want to thank you so much for the great music and being a great guest with us here this evening. I'm sure we made you think about songs a little differently that you haven't thought about for a long time,
Mhm.
but
Yep.
that's the whole purpose of this show. Um, I hopefully, we gave respect to each one and presented them from a deep mental health perspective too. And, I wish you guys in the band continued success and best
Yep.
of luck with your new recordings and the new lineup.
Yeah. And
Awesome. Thank
please
you.
let me know if you ever come through Indianapolis, because I will be there to see you.
Absolutely. I just want to give a quick thank you to Utah, because we wouldn't be where we are today without his support for local music and Shady Lady Productions.
Mhm.
Utah is one of the key components to help us get our music out there, and same with Jazz at Rattle Clack and Clint at Speed Freaks and Mad at Rock for Life. But Utah and Bob Kopp and Shady Lady Productions and the Grassroots have really helped us spread our message in a way that we didn't think was possible. So I want to at least
We
give him that
for the
much.
Yeah.
people and if they're interested who Utah is, it's Utah Burgess. And if you go back probably about 8 or 9 shows back, maybe even a little less than that, you'll find the great interview we did with Utah as well. So, great person, and he's the one who lined, you up, Terry, up with us today too. So,
Yeah.
Terry, thank you very much for joining us today. And again, as I said, we wish you continued success.
Yeah. Thank you,
It's
Terry.
been an absolute pleasure. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay. So, Dr. Davis, when we look at all these songs together, isolation, guilt, feeling control, battling your own mind, hiding pain, and then feeling hollow. I think I covered all 5 songs in that there. What does that tell you about people and what they're really going through right now?
I mean, I think we are all, it's a very traumatic time. And I think that everyone to some degree is probably feeling that way. I think really I think people are going through this right now. There's a lot of chaos in the world. And I think that a lot of people are suffering in silence, and really doing the best they can to hold everything together. But, people can only handle so much.
So it's a lot more common than we really think.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask the last question here. For someone watching this who sees themselves in any part of what we talked about today, what's the first step? I'm not talking about like, here's the big fix, do this,
Yeah.
not everything all at once, just the very first step of starting to get out of the place that they're in.
I think the first part of it is acknowledging where I'm at, like if things are falling apart or if I'm struggling, it's acknowledging that okay, let's hit pause. I'm really struggling here. And then the best thing that anyone could do is tell somebody. Tell someone that you trust, that you love, that loves you. Reach out to someone for help. And if you don't have a family member or friend, reach out to a therapist. But reach out to somebody and let them know that you're struggling.
We talked about it during the interview, and we even talk about it in every Waypost commercial. You have to make that first step.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't sit here and read your mind, and like Terry talked about in a lot of his songs, you put on that act, that
Yeah.
appearance, and everything's okay. And it's not, and we're not going to know it's not okay unless you reach out. So, you know, when you listen to these songs one by one, they're powerful, but when you put them all together, they start to tell a really big story.
Mhm.
It's a story about what it feels like to struggle, to question, to fight battles that nobody else does.
And what stands out to me is that every one of those experiences, as heavy as they are also human. They're things people go through, even if they don't always talk about them.
And maybe the biggest takeaway that you should take from this episode is that if you ever felt alone, overwhelmed, or like you're carrying something you can't, okay, just remember, and even Terry said that, and I didn't want to interrupt him. He said, but you realize you're not the only one.
Yeah. And more importantly, you don't have to stay there. There are always ways forward, and there are people who will walk that path with you.
And if something in this episode really hit close to home for you, we want you to hear this clearly. You matter. Your story matters. Your life matters. Okay, and whatever you're going through, it doesn't have to be something that you carry alone.
Yeah. Remember, if you or someone you know is struggling in the United States and Canada, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And if this conversation meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need it.
You know, it's very easy. We have a lot of people that are watching but are not subscribing. Okay,
Yeah.
and I thought it was just us, but at least I'm relieved to see it's everybody's having that problem too. Yeah, if you just hit that little like button, the subscribe button, doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
And plus share the episode. You might know a veteran,
Yeah.
that someone really close to you, a good friend that needs to hear this. This is an important episode. And we thank you all for spending the time with us. Remember, please visit our website at yourlifematterspodcast.com. And never forget, please never ever forget, your life matters.
Your life matters.
God bless you, and we hope to see you next week on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share the episode so more people can be part of these important conversations around mental health. And remember, your life matters. We hope to see you again next week.